Hello and welcome to OLA 2020. Thank you so much for joining us in this session on staff inclusion and decision making. My name is Jessica Givens and I am this year's chair of membership engagement, and I'm so happy to moderate this session for you today. I'm joined by our presenters, Lisa Wells, Jennifer Marshall, and Kelly Sitzman. Lisa Wells is the Executive Director for Pioneer Library System in Central Oklahoma. She is a graduate of the University of Oklahoma with an MLIS in Library and Information Studies, a graduate of the Urban Libraries Council Executive Leadership Institute, recipient of the ULC Joey Rogers Leadership Award, a 2008 Library Journal Mover and Shaker, and a graduate of Class 22 of Leadership Oklahoma. Jennifer Marshall is the collections manager at the Pioneer Library System, where she manages technical services and oversees the delivery and ILL departments. She's been working for PLS for 19 years. When she's not at work, she enjoys spending time with her nieces and nephew, reading teen fiction and suspense novels, and going to Disney World. And Kelly Sitzman is the branch manager of the Pioneer Library System's Norman Public Library East. Kelly is a graduate of the University of Oklahoma with an MLIS in Library and Information Studies. She is embedded in her community and currently serves as a board member of Norman Next and Norman's Eastside's Business Association. She's also a graduate of the American Library Association's Leadership Institute, OLA Gold Leadership Institute, and was awarded the 2018 PLS Distinguished Colleague Award. She lives in Norman with her husband and fur babies. So I will be back at the end of this session with some questions for our presenters, but for now, I will turn it over to Kelly.
Thanks, Jessica. We are so excited to be here to talk with you today about some ways that Pioneer Library System has incorporated staff inclusion in decision-making. And these are just a few of the ways that we've incorporated some of these initiatives into our workflow to move our mission forward. So we really hope today that this inspires you to think about ways that you can apply either this program or something similar in your organizations. So we're going to ask you some questions throughout this presentation, and we encourage you to either pause your presentation or pause the video, or just take a moment to reflect on these whenever we ask, and just give some thought on how this applies to you and your role, whatever that may be. So first and foremost, we want to ask you, how would you rate your organization in terms of inclusion? So give that some thought, pause the video if you need to, and just keep that in the back of your mind as we talk about this next section. So we're going to talk about inclusion today in terms of staff inclusion and not just diversity. So this is an article from the Harvard Business Review, and in this article, they talk a lot about how most business leaders really understand the diversity part of diversity and inclusion, but it's the inclusion part that really eludes them. And they understand that being diverse and having a diverse workforce is really important to customers and critical thinking and success of an organization, but the inclusion part is a little more elusive or harder to attain. So what we're talking about today is really an employee who doesn't feel comfortable in his or her own work environment is not going to be retained through those typical inclusion strategies that you see lots of businesses offer, like competitive benefits, raises, bonuses, employee recognition programs, and even free snacks in the break room, which is also really important. I think we would all agree, but that's not really at the core of what retains your employees and really makes them feel like they belong to your organization. So businesses, and that includes libraries, really should work to create an environment where people can really be who they are and feel like their values and unique talents and perspectives are being valued and makes them want to stay. And really, so at the heart of it, it's getting down to knowing your employees, knowing your staff, knowing that their individual strengths and talents play into your organization and are being maximized so that you're all moving your organization forward in the same direction.
Pioneer is a multi-county library system in Oklahoma serving Cleveland, McLean, and Pottawatomie County with administrative offices in Norman.
As of December 2019, Pioneer serves 10 communities with 12 branches, as well as information stations in our rural communities with over 250,000 total registered users. Our service population is 394,000. Our employees are at 310 total employees, 160 of them being salaried, 120 hourly, and 30 security staff members. Our mission is inspiring innovation, engagement, and learning in our communities. And our customer service philosophy is creating positive experiences for everyone. We have values of welcome, empower, and respect.
So in Pioneer, and probably your organization as well, we have everyone from administrative staff, which includes our executive and administrative teams and system departments, all the way to branch staff, which also encompasses everyone from supervisors all the way down to frontline staff, shelvers, library assistants. And every single organization is made up of people with individual talents and a diverse set of skills. In our organization, we do have our administrative building sits off from all the other locations. It does share a wall with our Norman Public Library West, which you can see pictured here. But other than that, it's physically removed from our other locations, which we'll talk a little bit more about later. Within administration, we have an executive team that's currently made up of 4 administrators. There is an administrative team that is mostly comprised of system supervisors, but also includes a couple regional coordinators and branch managers. And then historically, Pioneer has always tried to include all levels of staff in various committees. So any kind of system-wide committee that comes together, we try to put together a diverse group of staff, supervisors, staff from different branches and different levels. And we'll talk about in our next section how we've kind of taken that committee structure to the next level to really maximize what those committees look like. So I will turn it over to Lisa to talk about our next section of critical mission teams.
Thanks, Kelly. As we get ready to start talking about our critical mission teams, I want you all to pause, as Kelly encouraged you to do just a little bit ago, and think about what are some priorities of your organization. Maybe some things that are on the horizon that you haven't implemented yet, or even just things that are out there and they're on a low simmer and you're trying to decide what's going to, rise to the top and what's going to cause you to take action over the course of the next few years. As Pioneer did that, well, I guess I should give you a little bit of time to think about it. I'm sorry, I was moving right along. I'll take a pause. Hopefully 1 or 2 things have come to mind that you think are priorities for your organization. And for Pioneer, we implemented critical mission teams. The critical mission team, we really looked at our strategic plan, we looked at our goals for the year, and we determined in all of our resources, what's a critical piece of moving that mission forward? And also, what are things that we're working on? So just to kind of outline a little bit what a critical mission team looks like and how they differ from committees. The work is identified by administration as a priority that affects PLS as a whole. And as I said, moves our strategic plan forward. The administration identifies the chair of the mission team, and they work with the chair to select members. And then the teams are actually staff-led. They're not necessarily led by a member of ad team or by a member of executive team. The membership of the critical mission teams reflects administration to system departments, representation from our branches. A variety of strengths are demonstrated and skills, a variety of frontline staff as well as supervisors. And we try to look for diversity of perspective and experience. Each of our critical mission teams has an executive team sponsor. And this was really important to us because we wanted the work of the team to be along the guiding principles of where executive team knew that we were headed. We didn't want the critical mission teams to feel as though we've done a lot of work and now we've moved this idea up the chain and it's been denied, or we've been told to refocus our work. So having each critical mission team have an executive team representative really allows for that immediate dialogue. If it's something that the exec team member isn't quite sure of, our executive team meets weekly, and so they bring those things forward. We just want to make sure that we're keeping the work of the teams moving forward, and that the team members, as well as the rest of the system, feel as though it's meaningful work and that it's work that affects the future of our mission. We currently have 4 critical mission teams. They include our customer service critical mission team, our programming critical mission team, which also has started overseeing our PLS reads, our Savannah critical mission team. Savannah is a platform that we use with one of our business partners, Orange Boy. It's a platform that really helps identify customer behaviors and then allows us to message our customers based on that behavior, or to really, I would say it was a way to really fine tune our messaging so that it's important to me as a customer that I'm getting the message that I need. And then lastly, our 4th critical mission team is our PLS Connect app. We had developed an app back in 2015, and the app was really developed based on our assessment through a website design. And we realized that a lot of our customers thought the Pioneer website was Overdrive / now Libby. And I think we all realized that all of our libraries offer a lot more than just one service. And so we quickly realized that our user experiences were not the same, and that for the physical customer, you could come in the door and expect to get anything you wanted, but our digital customers were being directed to 4 or 5 different apps depending on which solution. So maybe a different app for magazines and a couple of apps for digital resources, and then another app for Mango languages, and and it goes on and on. So those comprise our 4 critical mission teams, and in different ways they're all very important, either in terms of our investment in that particular resource or in the way that we think it moves the mission forward. So that's just a little bit about our critical mission teams and how they're organized. As you take another moment to ponder one of our questions, I encourage you to think about what priorities could propel a critical mission team for your organization. So think about things that are either, it's the big audacious goal, it's the something you're wanting to do, or it's the new platform that you feel you've invested in. And a lot of services are going to be revolving around that platform. Or perhaps it's just your strategic plan and the different components of that strategic plan. So any of those things could be the foundation and the basis for a critical mission team. And we believe that it certainly ensures that you will have good direction and activity related to that critical mission team, and therefore that particular service or activity is going to be successful. Jen, I'm going to turn it over to you.
For our next section, we're going to be talking about cat chats. So while I talk about these new forums that we hold at Pioneer, think about this question. Are there any areas of your organization that serve in traditionally hidden roles?
Books and tomes and magazines, papers and films, even CDs. How do we categorize this or that? Let's sit down and have a cat chat.
Cat chats were created as a way to improve visibility of the cataloging department and to allow staff to get to know the catalogers and how they can help frontline staff in their roles. It started out as one of the cataloging staff members' goal to open a dialogue about clarification and updates on cataloging policies, procedures, and guidelines, give tips, and receive feedback from frontline staff. Frontline staff are talking with customers daily, and they understand information-seeking behavior, which can help make cataloging more intuitive and useful. To make it fun, the chats are cat-themed, and we encourage staff to send in photos of their cats that we then highlight in the presentation.
I am just going to jump in and say that this cat collage is my greatest accomplishment, I think, of my career. So enjoy. These are all PLS cats, by the way.
All famous in their own way.
This is a photo of our cataloging crew, traditionally hidden in the back of the house at administration. 3 years after its inception, the Cat Chat Forum continues 3 times a year, and we've seen a number of outcomes as a result. The first outcome really took customer behavior and needs into account. Based on staff feedback, cataloging developed a new subject heading for books with dyslexia-friendly print. During the Cat Chat, catalogers explained to frontline staff how to search for the subject heading and gave some examples of what this looks like and how it might be used when helping customers. The Cat Chats also support our customer service philosophy of creating a positive experience with seamless searching for customers, and also helping to close the gap between behind the scenes and frontline staff. Documentaries have really gained popularity lately, and based on feedback from staff, a new documentary DVD genre was created. Items were pulled from adult nonfiction where they were essentially hidden to customers wanting to browse DVDs, and they are now shelved with other popular DVDs. Catalogers also lead activities to create better customer experiences. They asked frontline staff for their input on how to organize foreign language DVDs. During the Cat Chat, the catalogers asked the participants, "You tell us, how would you assign Les Miserables, with an L or an M?" If we followed our rules for English titles, we would skip the article, but staff said they would look for this title and similar titles under the first letter. So in this instance, an L. Based on this exercise, we decided to keep those items under the first letter. Another change we made was to update the LGBT subject headings in our catalog to LGBT+ to be more inclusive. The Cat Chats have also improved internal customer service and relationships with staff. We sent out a staff survey to determine the usefulness of the information shared at Cat Chats, and the results were very positive. 86% of staff said Cat Chats were very helpful. Here are a couple of quotes from staff. "I appreciate how our catalogers desire staff to understand why and how they make decisions. They also want our input, and I think that allows us to best serve our customers." And here's another. "Cat Chats gives good insight into the behind the scenes of all the catalogers do." 72% of staff said they share the information they learn from the Cat Chats with other staff at their branch. One said, "I really appreciate the energy the cataloging team provides. That's outstanding internal customer service, and they make info easy to share with those who weren't able to attend the training." The Cat Chats have been well attended since we've been holding these sessions for the last 3 years. While the staff are learning and building better relationships, they get to see their pets on the screen as we talk. As you can see from the photos on this slide, we usually have a Dog Days of Summer session each year, allowing staff to send in photos of their dogs as well as cats. So now that you've heard about what we're doing at Pioneer, take a moment to think about some ways that your organization could help employees in traditionally hidden roles shine.
Well, I get to talk about the next section. And, you know, this might be one of the few times when I can say it's so great that this is a recorded session and not a live session. Because, you know, sometimes in a session, someone asks a question that you can't really answer because you perhaps are sitting next to your supervisor or your director or your assistant director. So the thing I want you to think about now, and to be really truthful when you're thinking about it, is how accessible is your administrative staff? And remember, this is being recorded, so you don't have to worry about anyone seeing your answer. Fireside chats is something that was a goal of mine that we implemented a couple of years ago. And I really don't think it matters what organization you're in, how old or young the organization is. I think anytime a survey goes out that asks the question, How do you think we can improve? One of the things that shows up is communication. And it really doesn't matter how great you think you're communicating, how many opportunities you feel that staff have to communicate, both with administration as well as with their colleagues. I think communication is something that we all have to continually strive to improve, because it's just such a moving target and things are changing so rapidly that communication is just the key. So one of the things that we started was a fireside chat. So monthly, we have a meeting at Pioneer that's called our All Supervisors meeting. And we rotate those meetings across our organization. So with 12 branches, we're in a different branch each month. And following that afternoon training that all supervisors are at, I actually stay in that location for an hour to an hour and a half and visit with staff, give staff an opportunity to ask a question. It's great for staff because they have a lot of colleagues there that are visiting, that are other supervisors, and typically those are the folks that are minding the camp. They are working the front desk for that library, so all of the staff can attend the fireside chat. And I kind of start off each of the fireside chats previous to maybe the week before we're going to be in the branch the following week. I interact with the branch manager and I just let them know, I'm going to be coming to your place next week. And do you think that there's anything that really you're hearing, kind of chatter about, anything I need to really focus on or be prepared to answer? And I always, of course, have a list of things that I want to talk about. So I kind of start out the meeting by saying, I personally am not often silent, but I tell them that I can be silent for 2 or 3 minutes if I really set my mind to it. And so I start off by just letting them know that there aren't any questions that are off the table. Any question is something that you can ask me. I do warn them they might not like the answer, but they're free to ask the question. And I let them know that I'm going to give them 2 or 3 minutes to get started, and that if they don't get started with their questions, then I get to kind of get up on my communication item box and start sharing the things that I want to communicate about. And more often than not, there'll be some brave soul who will start asking questions. And then, of course, as you can imagine, the conversation usually feeds off of itself. There have been questions along the lines of, let me ask you about this system priority, or I've heard we're going to be doing digital programming. What does that look like? I've heard that we're going to be changing our strategic plan. What's the timeline? And sometimes it's just as simple as, what are you dealing with? And I get a chance to kind of talk about the things that are keeping me up at night and the things that executive team is working on. And oftentimes those are things that they're going to hear about in many months, because so often things have been talked about for a long time before they actually get rolled out for implementation on the frontline staff. So that kind of lets you know what the fireside chat looks like. I would say I think they've been very popular. Certainly have been a benefit to me to be able to see a lot of our staff in their home branch, in their home environment. And if nothing else, just to say hello and just to let them know that I'm interested to hear what they have to ask or what they have to say. You may think of some traditional roles when you think about your executive director. And I think oftentimes the roles that come to mind are, it's the groundbreaking, it's the director in a hard hat wielding the golden shovel, it's the ribbon cutting, it's welcoming community partners, or kicking off an all staff development day. And those truly are things that we do. But I think that more importantly, in addition to those things that you think of when you think of your administrative supervisor, I think the fireside chats really gives us a chance to interact one-on-one, to break down the barriers between staff and administration, and to build relationships, and just a chance to let people know that they have an opportunity to be heard. I think staff, of course, have great ideas, and they think things can be implemented immediately, and sometimes that they can. But there are other times that takes an entire process. But The piece that I think is so important when we talk about staff inclusion and retaining employees is just the opportunity for staff to be heard. And I think if staff feel heard and staff feel valued, a lot of other things that may not be to the standard that they're looking for. I think that inclusion and being heard and being appreciated goes a long way to building some patience and among staff, and to help staff understand that we may not all agree, but we're all in agreement that we're here as a team. So as we kind of wrap up this particular section about, what you think your administrator, how accessible you think your administrator is, I want you to think about some ways that you or your administrative teams, whatever they look like, any number, how could you be more engaged with all levels of your staff? What does that look like in your organization?
Thanks, Lisa. And that's a great segue into our last point that we want to share. So I get to ask you, I'm sure that you've been struck with the most brilliant idea ever. How easily do you think that you could share that idea with your administrative team? Maybe that's happened to you, or you can at least put yourself in that position. I want you to think about that as we move forward. So Big Ideas is one program that PLS has incorporated into our regular workflow. Just an overview of what this program looks like is it's what it sounds like. It's Big Ideas. It's a space, it's a carved out formal space for staff to share ideas that they have, big or small, as the name doesn't necessarily imply, but any kind of idea with our executive team. So this is a monthly opportunity for staff to submit their ideas, to then present in person, or maybe now virtually with our executive team. And we do ask that there is some legwork done ahead of time. So once a month, an email goes out to all PLS staff, reminding them that Big Ideas is on this date and time. And we do ask for some, like I said, some groundwork of think about what your idea is. Who would your idea involve? If you have a budget for your idea, what would that look like? So putting together some of those critical thoughts beforehand. And then you get to come present your idea. And it's, like I said, it's formal, but it's also informal. It's more of a conversation. You can present your idea. I've done it before, so I'm speaking from experience. It's not scary. So you get to talk one-on-one with the executive team about whatever it is that you're proposing. If it's a process, if it's, a staff initiative, if it's something huge, and we'll go over some of the examples that we've had in the past. But how this came to be was for many reasons. I think a lot of what Lisa just spoke to, making sure that people feel heard and have that space. But every year, PLS has self-evaluations as part of our performance evaluation package. And there was a pattern of ideas being shared on self-evaluations that were really great. And those evaluations only come out once a year. And it's an instance where, it's almost unfortunate that they hadn't shared that sooner, because sometimes ideas are all about timing. And if you save that up for the end of the year, maybe that opportunity has passed, or there's something upcoming that we missed that opportunity to learn about this earlier on. So that kind of got the wheels turning on how can we create more of an open dialogue about ideas that staff have, and not just wait until their evaluation to roll around. So we have this new program. We've also learned a lot through this process. Like I said, big ideas don't necessarily have to be big. So that's something that we've had to adjust and share, bring any idea that you have. We've had examples from, let's change the hold music on our phones so that you're not listening to 80s techno music, but instead hearing services that the library has to offer, all the way up to let's create a makerspace in our library by partnering with this municipality, something we've wanted to do for a long time. Some other takeaways from big ideas, like I said, timing has a lot to do with it, for better or worse. And that's something that gives everyone an opportunity to learn from. One example was a staff member brought an idea of going totally solar, having one of our buildings be entirely solar powered. And that's amazing. And that's a great goal to work toward. Unfortunately, the budget may be a barrier in that case, and infrastructure, right? But it was
a really, really big idea, Kelly.
Yeah, really, really big idea.
Really, really, really big.
Tiny to ginormous. And but that was really beneficial for PLS to hear that idea, and that we have a lot of green initiatives, we have a lot of sustainability priorities, and that staff, that matters to them. And here's another way that we can continue to think about that. Another example was a staff member who brought a customer service model from a local hospital. And we really liked that idea. There was a lot of potential there, and just trying to figure out how that model worked with ours, it didn't quite fit. You know, we're not a hospital, we're a library. So we ended up taking elements of that model, and we happened to have a customer service philosophy being crafted at the time. So we were able to easily pull from that and place into our plan and make it meaningful to Pioneer in a way that, again, moved us forward. And then lastly, summer reading program has morphed into our summer learning challenge. And I'll talk a little bit more about that, but that's another example of how these big ideas kind of snowball and continue to build over time. We definitely are learning. Like I said, we are currently reevaluating. We're always evaluating to make sure it's relevant, and we're doing the best we can. So Lisa mentioned communication, and finding the ways that we can communicate what big ideas have been shared, and, you know, sharing the ones that have been seen to fruition, and also the ones that haven't. You know, I think sharing that solar power idea is important, even though it wasn't doable in that moment. We've also had months where there weren't any big ideas sent in, and that's okay. So learning to readjust with that. Obviously, COVID shenanigans has also helped us be nimble with that, and had to readjust and be flexible. And then just getting the word out and encouraging people to come share their ideas. It's not scary, like I said, but that, you know, their big idea can be heard no matter what that looks like. So
I think one of the things that we also have learned through this process, and you alluded to it a little bit about timing, I think sometimes the big ideas really turn into be a just do it idea. You know, it's perfect timing, we're ready to roll out something, this falls right in line with that, just go do it. So I think, you know, the things that have been shared at Big Ideas do really span from, you know, the very simple, well, you know, what, you don't say this, but you want to ask, why did you have to wait to present this big idea? This could have just happened, you know. But we really have had a lot of things that we have just, you know, serendipitously just been able to move directly forward, and the timing was right, and it happened really without very much time delay. And then, as Kelly said, it ranges all the way on up to the, you know, let's be totally solar.
So some examples of big ideas that we've had are, like I mentioned, Summer Learning Challenge. A couple of years ago, we had staff present on this idea of taking our summer reading program kind of to that next level of, especially for adults, they don't experience that summer slide. They're not in school. So how can we engage them in a way that's meaningful? So we came up with this challenge. This was actually incorporated into our summer reading calendars on the back, and adults, and I think it was anybody actually, open to any age group, but if you completed your challenge, you received a prize. And so we saw some really great engagement that way, and just kind of reimagining what summer reading engagement looks like. And incorporating some other elements of our library services. So it's not just about reading, it's about learning. So we wanted to really highlight some of the other library resources that we have. You know, reading a book that's on display, reading a graphic novel, getting outside your comfort zone. So that was one small idea, and it just so happened that at that exact moment, administrative team had been talking to a company called Beanstack, who you may have heard of, about how we could incorporate summer learning online and using our mobile app. So that, again, just happened to be fortuitous timing that this challenge could be rolled into an online format. And since then, I think this is our second full year of using Beanstack as an online service. We have implemented a summer learning challenge. So again, broadening that umbrella of this isn't just about reading, that's just as important, but it's also learning, and it's for all ages and getting the community involved. So again, that's just a great example of being at the right place at the right time. Another idea was implementing exercise bikes in the library. So this was something that health has been a focus of Pioneer Library System, and thinking about ways that we can really turn our health literacy into action and getting people to actually work on their health and learn about it in all different aspects. So we had a staff member present this idea. She was very excited about it, did a lot of research, called a lot of libraries across the country about what their bike situation looked like, and presented that to exec team. And you never know how that's going to go. As a manager, I'm sure lots of you are thinking of all the liability and all of the red flags. So we came prepared with why we think this could happen and be a thing. And exec team was very open to it, and it in fact spurred some larger conversations about how could we change waivers to be look different, and really allow us more freedom to have programs like this and ideas like this in the library. So that's an ongoing conversation, but we were able to get those bikes, and people have been using them in cold weather and hot weather, and that's been really awesome, a great supplement to all of our health programming as well. The census 2020 that is still ongoing. You can still fill out your census form if you haven't already. But this was an idea of having a census champion at every branch in the Pioneer Library System, so that there would be one dedicated person who is totally on board and knows everything about the census inside and out, and can speak to the community and staff and identify those opportunities in the world to be present and have a census information table. And that has continued on even through COVID. Jessica Givens actually is a coordinator for us and has been great about keeping that in the forefront of everyone's minds, making sure that we know this is still relevant and important. So that's been another great example of something that's kind of snowballed and become really relevant even as our world changes. And then lastly, the last idea we had was about a staff member from one library system, this is also kind of a cautionary tale, who decided to present on getting a library card for every student in a grade at one of her schools in her service area. And as a result, from that conversation, that really snowballed, and we ended up getting cards for everyone in that district. So sometimes your big idea can become a bigger idea, so be prepared for that. But that was a great opportunity for her to build those relationships and get those library cards and access to all of those students in that area. So, having heard some of the ideas that have been shared, what big ideas could you share with your organization?
What I was going to tell you while we were letting the participants think about this last question, I recently got a call from the mayor, super excited about Summer Learning Challenge, and was hoping that we could really highlight filling out the census as one of the learning components. So I told her absolutely it would count and she could broadcast that, but might be something that we want to hit with social media, because the mayor was very interested in that activity being highlighted as something that was recordable on your Summer Learning Challenge at the library.
I love that. I love that crossing of paths. And it's funny how when you have those ideas already implemented, they just kind of mesh together and all work together. I think that's
absolutely
done it well. Thanks for that. So as we wrap up, I think the point that we really want to drive home is a couple of things. I think, and I'll let Jennifer and Lisa jump in too, but I think that we are very how we've found a lot of success with this is that all of these initiatives and all of these plans that we've put into place really truly move our organization forward. They align with our mission of inspiring innovation, engagement, and learning in our communities, whether that's thinking of big ideas and really innovating, either, refining processes to make them more streamlined, or looking for opportunities to make things better, or doing things that have never been done before. Or whether that's engaging with your staff at all levels and just carving out that time to sit down and listen and be, also be heard. Learning from one another, learning from those departments that you may not usually hear from, and learning why the decisions are made and, the reasoning behind it, but also, that's a two-way street. So learning from each other, and learning from customers and being able to implement that to move us forward. And, critical mission teams are a little bit of everything, is how I think of that, of putting together strategic teams that are innovating, they're engaging, and they're learning and teaching others. So really thinking about, if it doesn't move your mission forward, is it a priority? Is it something that will truly help with that synergy like we just mentioned? Or is it so far off in left field, you're always trying to find a way to include that or make it relevant? And also, just again, these are just some examples that have worked for us, and certainly there are probably ideas that we've not even thought of or considered or thought were possible that may be perfect for you and your organization. So that was just my closing thoughts. But Jennifer and Lisa, anything you want to add about that?
Kelly, I'll just add that I think focusing on staff, I think that all of our organizations are pro-staff organizations. I don't think we have anyone out there in any library anywhere that thinks staff don't matter. But I think what happens is we get so focused on our external delivery of services and programs and all of the things that we're doing for our citizens and our public and our constituent, whatever that constituent looks like. But I think that when, for me personally, when I became the executive director, I looked at something differently that I had known for a long time. So for a long time, I had known that, like 69% of our total budget is spent on personnel. And that's a number that was not new to me, but I had not really thought about it in terms of, 31% of all of our money is spent externally, and 69% is spent internally. And it doesn't matter how great of service you give or how great the resources or the business partners that you have, Reader's Advisory, on and on and on and on. It doesn't matter how well we do those things if we don't have the right people on board to deliver those services. So for me personally, it became my commitment to try my best to engage staff. And as a part of that, I personally speak with every single full-time staff member as they are recommended for hire. I speak to them, and it's one of the things that I share with them, that staffing is very important to me. Personnel is our number one resource, because if we don't have the right personnel, the 31% of our resources that we're paying for are not going to be delivered effectively. And I think when you think about staff as an investment, rather than as the tool to accomplish these other things, then you start realizing that you need to invest in staff, because none of us really would make an investment that's 69% of our income and then just forget about it and just assume that the other 31% is going to make me successful. And so I think when you really kind of stop to think about staff in that way, then finding the time to carve out, which seems so easy, just carve out some time and do all these things. And we all know that most days it doesn't seem that we're in control of our own schedules. But I think when you look at it strictly from an investment point of view, you can understand and probably agree that you can't afford to not invest in staff. And if you don't have something in place that allows you to engage with your staff in a personal situation, in a personal way, they're going to have a difficult time moving forward that 31% of your investment at a really high level. And so I just encourage everybody, regardless of the position that you're in, we all can make a difference somewhere. And I think oftentimes we go to programs and we go to conferences and your takeaway is, that's really great. I can never do it. I can never do it at my place. We can't do this. We can't do that. We're little. I'm just a two-man show, or they're really big. We don't have those resources. It goes both ways. But I just encourage everybody that takes the time to listen to this particular recording to find a way just to do one thing, because oftentimes just getting started is the hardest thing. And as Kelly, I think you mentioned somewhere along the way, it kind of snowballs after that. And I think that once staff begin to understand that they are a priority for the organization, then they are willing to pretty much up their investment as well. So I'll just close by saying, please take the time to really think about some of the things that you've heard today, and just find one thing that you can replicate, whatever that looks like for your organization, and give it a try. And if it doesn't work, then try something else.
Absolutely. And I know this stat is a few months old, but I did want to mention too that in Pioneer, we have a 63% of employees have been with PLS for over 10 years, which I think really speaks to, like we mentioned at the very beginning, that staff retention. And when people feel like they matter and their strengths are being used in the right way, that makes them want to stay. So I know, speaking for myself, that makes me happy to be a Pioneer employee. So, but yeah, I hope you guys have taken some good thoughts away from today's presentation, and we asked you a lot of questions. So as you're reflecting on those and thinking about that call to action, if you have any questions, if you want any clarifying information, I know that was a lot to cover in just a short amount of time. So this is where you can reach us. And I know that all three of us would be happy to answer any questions that you may have. So thank you, guys.
Jessica, do we have questions that have come in already?
Yes, we have some questions for y'all. Thank you so much for presenting today. So a few questions that I have. I have the benefit of working with you all in Pioneer, but taking off my Pioneer hat a little bit. You mentioned at the very beginning, you asked everyone to sit and think about the level of staff inclusion at their library or in their system. How would you suggest assessing that, informally or formally? How do you get a feel? How do you know if that's an issue in your library?
Well, I think it can be as easy or complicated as you want to make it. I am typically more of a cut to the chase kind of gal. So I'll just say, if you're working in an organization and you don't feel like anyone's ever asked you anything about how things are going or how we could be better, or this is an idea we're thinking about, what do you think? I personally wouldn't find your organization very inclusive. And that degree of involvement is going to change depending on the size. So I'm not necessarily saying, if you're a large system, that your executive director should have called the shelver to ask that question. But I'm saying somebody should have asked the shelver. And so, not necessarily setting us all up to fail because, we're thinking about, because I've set the kind of tone that somebody should have asked you. I just think somebody along the way should be asking every employee, how are things going? How are you doing? How can we help? How can we do better? What are the roadblocks that you have to being able to move our mission forward? Kelly, do you or Jen have something that you want to add?
Yeah, I was going to say, looking at your various teams that you have in place already, whether that's in your branch, looking at what projects you have put people on or the projects that you're on. And I think too, if you have maybe a team that's not as effective, look at that. And maybe it's because you don't have the right talents or in the right positions, making sure that that if Susie she loves organizing, that she's not in the wrong position, or that person who's that big thinker isn't in a position where they're having to put together the details. So looking at those teams that you have in place, and then just assessing that. But absolutely. And I think too, the two-way street of communication and asking those questions, I think that grassroots, having conversations at the frontline level and being able to pass that information and that feedback up is just as important as having those discussions at the higher level and then trickling down that information. That two-way street is how I think you'll get the most most out of, making your work meaningful on both ends of the scale.
And coming from the perspective of the traditionally hidden departments that are kind of behind the scenes, take a look at some evidence of, what kinds of questions are staff sending into your department. Do they understand what you do and how you do it? And, take a look at what kinds of things they're wondering about, and those are the kinds of things that you need to share with them so that they really understand where you're coming from and how you do things and why you make the decisions that you make.
Thank you. That leads a bit to my second question. So how do you, while you're gathering input, like through cat chats, you mentioned some feedback that you got from staff that actually led to changes based on what staff were asking for. As you're asking for input from all over a large library system or for departments like cataloging, how do you balance the asking for input but managing expectations that you can't follow through on every piece of input from staff, kind of managing staff expectations of what it means to give input on a large scale?
That's a good point. We talk about that a lot. We do get sometimes suggestions from staff that are things that we, don't follow cataloging guidelines or are things that we would not be implementing. But we have we have monthly cataloging meetings, and we bring all of those points to the table, and we discuss them as a group together. And then we do give that feedback back to the staff. If we've gotten a suggestion and it's something that we're not going to be able to implement, we will get back to the staff member and let them know and give them the reason why we weren't able to do whatever they were suggesting, or maybe we've done, some degree of it, but not exactly what they've asked for or something, but we definitely want that two-way communication. So we don't want to just leave them hanging if they've asked for something, and we're not just going to ignore it if we think we're not going to be able to do it. So I think that's really important.
Thank you. So for some of the folks out there who may be managers or maybe their frontline staff who are interested in management or administration but aren't in administration, and they think they see opportunities for their admin to have more increased communication or something like fireside chats, do you have any suggestions for someone how they might put that forward or ask for increased communication between all levels of their library?
Well, I think Kelly mentioned, that this was really born out of self-evaluation. And so in our organization's self-evaluation, there's a question that says, is there something that would enable me to better my performance? Or is there something that my supervisor can do that they're not doing now? And I think oftentimes the self-evaluation, it appears, from reading many of them, the self-evaluation often seems to me as though it reads as if this is the only opportunity I ever have to voice a concern or a comment, which I find really sad. But I think it really just is going to depend on your organization and your structure and the level of trust. And so let's say all of that's really good. I think it's easy. I think you just have to have the courage to say to someone, hey, I've really been wondering about this. I think it's a great idea. I don't know how to move it forward. Maybe it's you and a colleague. Maybe it's you and your supervisor. Maybe you just show up at some place that the director goes to lunch every day, when the director used to go to lunch every day instead of eating at home. And you're just there, and you just like plant it in the conversation and you see, does this take wings or not? But I think if you're in a situation where there's not a lot of sharing going on and there's not a lot of inclusion, I've often found that it's really beneficial to just be forthright. It doesn't always get the result you're looking for, but I don't think anybody, I certainly hope that there's no one that's in a supervisory or a leadership role that would have a staff member approach and say, really thought a lot about this and I want to share it with you. And if that staff member is going to share an idea with you, especially if they can, share the thought process behind it or give you some idea of how they think this is going to move the strategic plan forward, or this is how, I know this particular project is important to my organization or to my library or to my school. And I think doing this activity would help us get closer to that. I would just say if that's sort of met with a closed mind, you might be asking yourself, is this the right place for me? I mean, sometimes we're not in the position that we need to be in. And sometimes we are just not willing to take the risk to voice an idea. I think Jennifer spoke to, there's things that are moved forward that are not implemented, but yet that employee gets a return email or a return conversation that I'm sure thanks them for their feedback and lets them know, the reason it's not going to be implemented. I want to say, and I hope that I'm correct, that in the profession of librarianship, that there would be very limited times when someone would go to a colleague and say, I have an idea, that they would just be ignored. And I hope I'm not wrong.
Yeah. Well, any other final thoughts before we wrap up today? Okay. Thank you all so much for presenting. Thank you, Lisa, Kelly, and Jennifer, and thank you everybody for attending today. Excuse me, if you enjoyed this session, I would encourage you to think about joining your OLA division, either public libraries, university and college, or Oklahoma school librarians, for more opportunities to learn and connect with library staff across the state. Please remember to complete a session evaluation in the OLA conference app, and we hope you will join us for many more conference sessions this year.